Watchers in the Fourth Dimension.
Why do I always let my curiosity get the better of me?
A gentleman of the road, madam. Richard Mace, at your service.
That's the trouble with regeneration. You never quite know what you're going to get.
Hello and welcome back to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. I'm Anthony.
I'm Diana.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Reilly.
And it's that time again. We have reached the end of yet another season, so that means it's time for our Season 19 retrospective. As usual, we will be approaching this with our award-style categories, followed by a roundup of our various scores and metrics, before taking some questions from you, dear listeners, solicited through our social media platforms. We're not doing any mail this episode, as we're recording this as we come out of our technology-driven hiatus. We're actually fully caught up on mail right now. But we do love getting your feedback, thoughts, comments, and questions, and we do try to read out as many as possible on the show. So please do get in touch. You can contact us through Facebook and Instagram at @Watchers4D, or you can email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. Additionally, as always, we would absolutely love it if you subscribe to the podcast, if you're not doing so already, and if you dropped us a review or rating on your podcast platform of choice. And so with that, we are going to dive straight in to our award categories. As usual, we will answer in reverse alphabetical order, so Reilly goes first, followed by Julie, then Diana, and then finally myself. So, first up, we have the best and worst stories, and our nominations this season are Castrovalva, Four to Doomsday, Kinder, The Visitation, Black Orchid, Earthshock, and Time Flight. Reilly, over to you.
Well, the best to me is no question. It's Earthshock. Actual character depth, supporting characters that are actually interesting, strong action and suspense, and of course, one of the most somber Who endings of all time so far. Worst is, this might be a bit controversial, Kinda. I know that may come as a surprise, but I really didn't care for Hindel's descent into madness. The setup is very cliched, colonizers versus natives. Nyssa was sidelined, and the weirdness that it showed just really wasn't that weird enough for me. Also, the group dynamic of the TARDIS crew was probably at best a level of just mutual disdain, so not one I really cared for.
As unexpected. All right. I imagine we'll get some hate mail for that. Julie, over to you.
Well, you have one opinion. I'll say the best story, I believe, is also Earthshock. Much of the same opinion that Reilly just gave. I do want to give a shout out to Black Orchid, because I think Black Orchid is very good. It's tight-knit, and I really, really enjoyed the time periodness of it. But Earthshock does take the cake there. And worst story, it's Four to Doomsday. Do I have to explain that one all that much?
No, you don't.
It's Four to Doomsday.
All right, Diana, what have you got?
So my best is not going to change anything here because it's also Earthshock for, again, the same reasons everybody else has said. But I also think that it's the first time that the TARDIS crew liked each other. And we had enough of that kind of a growth with a simple enough story that it really let us feel within the story, which I think is what the whole season was missing, which is why the worst story for me is Castrovalva, because it starts it off with a bang in the sense that nobody likes each other, nobody's getting along, you don't get any time with the characters, everybody's sidelined at some point or another. It's too complicated of a story when we're trying to start off a new season, a new doctor, a new companion. Maybe I would have liked it somewhere else in the season. Probably not, because it wasn't like super great, but especially being the kickoff for the season, it was bad.
Yeah, hard to disagree. For me, I'm going to make this a clean sweep. The best story is clearly Earthshock. In addition to the characterization, I want to call out the tension throughout that story. The way tension is built in that first episode and then just maintained the whole way through is just masterful. I think that's really what brings it up to the top of the pile for me. As Diana said, we finally have a TARDIS crew that actually gets along and likes each other, except for the petulant argument between Adric and the Doctor at the very beginning. But by the middle, they've made up and got a TARDIS crew that's actually working together, and then they kill Adric. So just as we're getting there, it's like, let's take one of them out. Boom, done. Which in itself is a pretty hard hit. The worst for me, I made my displeasure at it known at the time. I think it's the lowest rating I've ever given a story, and that's Four to Doomsday. It's just not good. I can't come up with a lot that is redeeming to it. So I'm not even going to try and go beyond that. So I agree with Julie. Next up, we have best moment and worst moment, and this can be anything from over the course of the season. So Reilly, over to you.
Best moment for me was when the entire gang finally appeared to be enjoying being around one another, and that was at the party in Black Orchid. Up until then, I felt like they all wanted to stab each other. Worst moment would be the reveal that Khalid was the master. I don't like this master. I don't want the master in every other episode unless it's Delgado. The introduction of the master took a premise in Time Flight which could have gone almost anywhere, and then because the master's in it, it sets it on a very predictable course. So that is the worst moment to me.
All right, Julie, I know you're going to have like 7 for each of these. What have you got?
I've tried. Anthony, I've tried. Well, first I said I probably shouldn't say Adric dying, should I? No, but that's really not a best moment, other than the fact that it's one of the first really meaningful companion deaths that we've had in Doctor Who, and that in and of itself just leans a lot of weight into how dark I think J&T wanted to go with Doctor Who. But really, I think one of my other pieces was Tegan under the Mara's control in Kinda. She acted that beautifully, and I was mad that it didn't last longer. And that's my probably favorite moment. Worst moment is similar to Reilly's, but it's really the death scene of Khalid. It's unnecessarily gross and just really weird because obviously it's like, what is happening right now? And then, oh, great, it's the master. So kind of those things combined. And I would also say that potentially some of the misuse of some of the ethnic characters in Fort of Doomsday, it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but I think they missed the mark with some of them and what they could have done with some of the Greek characters and some of the other characters.
Bright side, though, at least they actually got actors of the right ethnicity to play them.
It's true.
All right, Diana, best and worst moment.
So this might come as a shock based on what Julie just said, but hands down, the best moment is Adric's death.
Now, see, I thought everyone would think I was going to pick that. I think it would be too obvious, but no. It's much more of a shock for you to pick it, though. I like it. Well,
and one of the reasons I like it is because I think I've kind of established that I don't necessarily need my characters to be actually like good people all the time. And as much as I know that Adric has got some issues, especially the whole arc in Earthshock where they really kind of dial back down into who his character was supposed to be at the beginning. The teenager who's just got puppy dog eyes at the master. Well, also him. That's part of the story arc. But puppy dog eyes at the doctor and just wants that notice me senpai moment. And when he finally gets it, he dies in this overly melodramatic way that was also so poignant when he's sitting there just holding his little rope belt that his dead brother gave him. Oh, golly, it really just was such a good moment in the middle of everything, even though it is the death of a character. You know, well done is well done. And I just thought it was the emotional beat that I've kind of been looking for through all of this. There's been real character development, and we got it. And you could feel it while you were watching it. So it really was one of the best moments of the show for me, R.I.P. Adric. But similarly, the worst moment was all of the Adric code switching throughout the season. The fact that they couldn't nail down, is he going to be a little bitch? Or is he an innocent little teenager that doesn't know what he's doing, but has a real good math brain? And they kept oscillating between the two and flip-flopping back and forth in a way that made it so that you couldn't hate or root for him, whichever way you fall with Adric, because there were some nice parts and then they make you feel all sad at the end. But then he was a little bitch to Tegan and Nyssa so many times. That part was awful. But also the personal worst part was the word I don't like time. As I was reading through my notes, I was like, chest flap. Oh, God. All of that. The weird body horror of this season where it was the mucus drowning and the skin and like all of it. Ugh, no, thank you.
The temptation to actually say it right now is insane, but I'm not going to.
Look, do you know how mad I am at the three of you and all of you listening? Because this word appears so much more in my head now, and I am so mad.
Sorry.
Not sorry.
No, sorry.
That's right, listeners. If you find us at Dragon Con and say those words, I will buy you a drink.
Made of my tears.
You're going to be buying a lot of drinks, Reilly. So my picks for this are, as the best moment, candidly, it's Adric's death. Not because I'm gleeful that Adric's dead. It's not I'm happy. But it was something where there was tension built up. It was sort of foreshadowed, but it was foreshadowed in a way that it felt like he was going to leave at the end of the story. Not that he was going to be smashed into Earth to cause the dinosaurs to go extinct. And there was a lot of, actually, I would say there's a lot of pathos there. People have criticized the fact that the credits were run silently, but I think it's effective. And if you don't like it, fight me.
I mean, because I had seen Game of Thrones beforehand, it was very reminiscent of the Red Wedding credits. And I think that is very telling because you just saw something horrific. And what else are you going to do other than just be like, what just happened? And silence is better for that.
It was the credit scene that got my tear to come out.
Yeah. Proof Diana has emotions.
Oh, no, don't tell anyone.
And I think the fact that they did so much to hide that by ensuring he had a cameo in Time Flight so that he would be in the Radio Times listings, thus making sure people wouldn't know that was coming. That was really smart. And that, I think, if I was a viewer at the time, would have made that all the more impactful. As for worst moment, we've all, well, 2 out of 3 of us so far have picked something from Time Flight, and I'm going to have to jump on the Time Flight bandwagon here. But for me, it's not Khalid. It's the appearance of the plasmatons. Monsters that were so badly designed, they couldn't move. Monsters that were so badly designed, they barely featured. And they did everything they could to minimize their appearance. I still don't entirely know what the plasmatons were for. I don't know what they were meant to do. All I know is they occasionally appeared surrounding someone with superimposed bubbles and then profit? They're really bad, guys. They're really, really bad. All right, next up, we are going to do Best Lead Actor, and this is a nominated category. So for this category this season, we have 4 nominees. We have Peter Davison as the Doctor, Matthew Waterhouse as Adric, Sarah Sutton as Nyssa, and Janet Fielding as Tegan. Reilly, what you got?
This is tough because I really do think the actors performed well. It's just they weren't given good material to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go with Janet Fielding because I feel bad earlier in our review of, I believe it was 4 to Doomsday, yes, where I pointed out the hysterics she showed in the TARDIS console room. And Diana was very nice to inform me that it most likely wasn't her acting choice. It was directed at her to do that. And when I thought about that and how all the actors were probably, due to the not great scripts, were forced to do things that just weren't great and didn't look good. And then I thought about how Janet Fielding as Tegan had to constantly complain. That's not her fault. That's just because they need to do something better with the writing for her. And then, just like Julie mentioned, you really get to actually see her shine. And that would be in Kinda. And also, I think later on, maybe in Time Flight a little bit, when she like eases up a little bit, you get a little more there. And there's a good power in her character and her acting when it's just not being too repetitive. So I'm going with her.
I'm actually very surprised by that, Reilly.
Who'd you think I was going to go with?
Not her.
Oh, okay.
Well, unexpected. Julie.
Well, it's also unexpected because now I feel bad because I didn't choose Janet Fielding. I went with Sarah Sutton. I think Nyssa, despite the times when she was sidelined, which I know did happen quite a bit, Black Orchid, and her being able to play the 2 characters and everything, that was obviously something that really shone. And I think that after Adric's death, there was a lot of weight and things that she had there. And I just think that all around, because she wasn't as flip-flopped around as Adric's character was and not as, why am I not going to Heathrow? She didn't have as many moments to overcome, and she was able to just shine as an actress.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. All right, Diana.
I had a hard time because, quite honestly, we have 4 very strong actors in our TARDIS gang with, like Reilly said, really terrible scripts. And so much of parsing through this is kind of what he was talking about, where it's how much of this is really the writer director and how much of this is the actor. And honestly, that's why I'm giving it to my boy, Matthew Waterhouse. which I know everybody's like, oh, surprise. But honestly, it's because Matthew Waterhouse was given a tough character. Adric was not the same in any script he was given. Everybody else kind of had similar places their character went. Adric was terrible one episode. He was sweet the next. He was insufferable. Good Lord. He definitely a hormonal teenage boy. But Matthew really played those to the extent where you really believed it was Adric in every minute. You know, you really believed that he was being this intolerable this episode and this helpful the next, and that he was this dumb and this smart in the same breath. And the fact that you could legitimately believe that, you know, this one kid is capable of all that. I give props to Matthew for slinging all that together. It's very impressive.
I mean, I had a feeling that's who you might have gone for, Diana. No surprise there. For me, I think it's Sarah Sutton as Nyssa. I actually really struggled with this season.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like Peter Davison hasn't really settled into the role and convinced all of us that he's the Doctor. It took Earthshock for 3 of us to be convinced, and Reilly still isn't convinced. I don't feel I can give it to him. Tegan, I felt, was insufferable at times, and maybe that's a credit to Janet Fielding and her acting prowess, but equally I found her kind of annoying and tedious, so I didn't feel like I could give it to her. Adric, likewise. Again, I'm sure Matthew Waterhouse did as best he could with it, but part of the problem there has been alluded to by Diana. They did so much code switching of his character, it felt like poor Matthew was unable to properly settle into the role at any point this season. So I didn't feel like I could give it to him, which leaves us, and I feel bad saying this, but kind of by default, with Sarah Sutton. And so Sarah Sutton gets it from me simply because she's not one of the other 3.
Damn.
Sorry, I didn't really want to give it to any of them this season, but she was the least objectionable. Now I've said some horrible things about people, we're going to move into best and worst supporting actors. And this can be anyone who wasn't one of the 4 who were nominated for best lead actor. So Reilly, let's start with you.
There were a lot of good supporting actors.
Mm-hmm.
And I just realized now when saying that there is one that I have not written down to mention, actually. But I'm sure that someone else will. So let us hold out on the side. And if nobody mentions it at the end, I'll bring it up. So first off, you would think that I would pick Michael Robbins as Richard Mace because the character is awesome. But this is for best actor, not for best character. So it's not him. I'm going to go with Richard Todd as Sanders and Kinda. It's the range of the performance to me that really is amazing. He nails the stiff upper lip English officer and then transitions to someone practically operating with the mind of a child. And that change was so striking. It was amazing. I could not comprehend how great he was at 2 completely opposite characters, basically. I also want to mention, just as honorable mentions here, Stratford Johns as Monarch in Fort of Doomsday. He was awesome. And, of course, a special shout-out to Annie Lambert as Enlightenment, too, because damn.
Now, is that from acting or is that from looks? Okay.
Okay.
You can plead the 5th, Reilly.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have to give a worst supporting actor.
You do.
Yes, I do. Well, I hinted at this earlier. It's going to be Simon Rouse as Hindle and Kinda. Even if you think the writing does a good job of portraying his development of madness, I still think that his performance is just a wee bit over the top. So I'm going with him.
All right. Julie, what have you got here?
I struggled with best supporting actor, and so you will get quite a few. I apologize. I had no problems mentioning Michael Robbins because he was amazing. And I love Richard Mace. And I don't think that character could have been pulled off by just any person, because when he was first introduced, I was afraid I was going to hate this character, but Michael Robbins pulled it off. I also have Stratford Johns as Monarch because, man, as much as I dislike that story, he was fantastic. And I will say I had a soft spot for Richard Easton as Captain Stapley in Time Flight. I just thought that he was delightful and affable. He just went along with everything. And I think that the actor himself just played that well, because it could have been a background character that you didn't remember, but I remembered him.
Amazing. And as worst?
I put down Hugh Hayes and Andre Winterton as the Seraphim.
Okay.
Partially because I honestly just hated the Seraphim, to be honest. But they didn't really strike me as really trying too hard or doing any sort of really good acting. It just felt that they were like, oh, we're just these virtual characters who come in for 5 minutes, say some bullshit and leave. So I'm just going to talk and then be done.
Yeah.
So I just felt that partially as characters, but also I think the actors didn't do a lot to really make them any sort of interesting character.
That's fair. All right, Diana, best and worst supporting actors.
So definitely throwing out the Richard Mace because obviously Michael Robbins was great in it as him. But my favorite character the whole season was Beryl Reid as Captain Briggs in Earthshock. She was awesome. She had just that don't fuck with me attitude, needs to have a glass of whiskey and a cigarette. She really reminded me of Roz from Monsters, Inc., but if like Roz was a sea captain.
Amazing.
Which I just adore. So she hit the nail on the head. It was acted well. She did a bang up job as Captain Briggs, but also Nair's Hughes is hot Sarah Jane in Kinda. And can you tell if mine are talent or looks based?
Well, you did it. You named the person that I had withheld.
Oh, nice. Hi, Sarah Jane. Yes. Anytime she wants to come back, I'm down. Worst supporting actor? I had a hard time with this one. Nothing terribly stood out to me until I realized that the only thing I could think of was that horrific little mime in Kinda.
Okay. Yeah.
So whoever said, I don't want to do that, that's the worst one.
All right, so best supporting actor, it's got to be Michael Robbins as Richard Mace. There is no question of that for me. However, this is where Reilly and I are going to be directly opposed because my runner-up on this is Simon Rouse as Hindle. His descent into madness and his complete inability to handle the situation, I found that kind of believable.
I agree.
I think he did a bang-up job with that. And he's no Richard Mace. He's not showing up, chewing the scenery in the most glorious way possible. But I think he did very, very well with that part.
Yeah, I think we had a disagreement on how quick the descent was because we thought it was normal. And Reilly was like, I missed it.
Yeah. Now, as worst supporting actor, I am going to go with Leon Nai-Tay, better known as Anthony Ainley, not as the Master, but as Khalid.
That's fair.
Because that performance was terrible. Genuinely terrible. The entire character was unnecessary. It was unnecessary that he was the Master, but the way Anthony Ainley really hammed that up, didn't love it. Didn't love it at all. So from my perspective, he is the worst supporting actor for that particular role. So next up, we move into best and worst villains, and we have some nominees here. We have the Master, as featured in Castrovalva and or Time Flight, Monarch from 4 to Doomsday, Hindle and or the Mara for Kinder, the Pteroleptals in The Visitation, and the Cybermen in Earthshock. And if anyone can make a convincing argument as to who the villain was in Black Orchid and why they deserve either best or worst spot, I will be very impressed indeed, but there will be no prizes. Reilly, over to you.
The villain in Black Orchid was the British ruling class.
I was about to say capitalism, duh.
But they are not the best villain. The best villain is Monarch. I'm picking this because I don't like picking the big Who villains for this award. I thought that the Cybermen were more vicious, more brutal. I also believe they had a somewhat better plan than Monarch did, a better scheme. But I don't like picking big Who villains. I like to appreciate the new ones. And I also really liked how Monarch did a good job of manipulating the TARDIS crew. Worst villain is the Master. I said it before, the less Master, the better. The Master feels like a narrative dead end. Stop using the Master until you do something different, please.
I find it interesting that you can't have them as the best villain, but you can have the returning ones as the worst villain.
Well, I mean, I like new. I feel like you need to give yourself the room to run with your villain when you have a show where your heroes, more often or not, will return the following week. You should at least have some sort of suspense of whether a character will keep continuing on or not. And it's a lot easier to have that when it's not someone like the Master where you can never get rid of. If I was showrunner, I would do a serious kill off the Master for good until some other showrunner came up and resurrected him. But I'm like, no more Master. Done with him.
All right, Julie, over to you.
I have no qualms of saying that the Cybermen were the best villain. Again, I think that because of how Earthshock was designed and its plot and everything, I just think that they had the best role. They had the best ideas. They were going about it the right way. Some of it was out of left field. Some of it maybe not super believable, but because the tension was there, you felt that the Cybermen were a threat the entire time. But I will agree that the Master is the worst villain, namely in Time Flight, because that felt all unnecessary. I understand why Castrovalva, it made sense that he was kind of still around. And I really like to see some of that little chase sequence and all of that kind of stuff that was going on there. But really, it's him in Time Flight. Just not good.
Yep, makes sense. Diana, you're next.
So as the best, I chose Hindle and Lamara because I don't think they're technically inseparable, because I really did enjoy that descent into madness. And the madness of man is far scarier than the sane evilness of anything else because it's unpredictable and it's terrifying. And the Heart of Darkness themes throughout his character and that evilness was honestly really well done. And I really liked it. And so they get definitely the best villain for me. Worst, I don't want to like jump on the Master train here because it's very clearly a big old train. And I personally don't dislike the Master, although I don't think he was well utilized in this season. And so he's definitely down there. But I wasn't a super huge fan of the Pterodactyls either. I didn't think that they were honestly well thought out. I thought they were kind of vague, just slap a fish, reptile, some amalgamation that with some legs, and they have a general concept of taking over the planet, but nothing concrete, no real plans. The four of them are going to repopulate the earth. Okay, good. Have fun. They were just very weak for me. Everybody else at least had some scary parts. The Pterodactyls were kind of boring.
Yeah. For me, I'm with Diana. It's the Mara. I'm not going to name Hindle, but I am going to name the Mara. I may not have said it or thought it at the time, but as I was thinking back on the season, the idea that there's this being that can not only infect the mind of someone and take them over, but is then also super persuasive and telepathic to the point where they can assert control over a civilization. That's really scary in concept. And I think it worked quite well in Kinder. I'm looking forward to when we see a bit more of the Mara. For worst villain, I'm with Reilly and Julie. It's the Master. He is so poorly used. I had high hopes for this Master. And as a kid, I loved this Master. And it kills me to be dumping on Ainley's Master here, but the truth is, he's not good. He does not live up to Delgado's legacy. Mm-hmm. Either they need to stop trying to make him like Delgado and take the character in a totally different direction, or they needed to hire someone who was much better at being Delgado. He's not working for me, and I'm in agreement. All right, next up, we have my favorite pair of awards. The Dougie Camfield Award for Best Director and the Richard Martin Award for Worst Director, better known as the Dougie and the Dickie. Reilly, tell us about your Dougie and your Dickie.
All right. Well, the Dougie for me goes to Peter Grimwade for Earthshock. Great sets, great job at building tension, and of course, excellent job on the death scene. Very, very sharp. Worst director for me is Ron Jones because I don't want to watch a commercial of British Airways or Heathrow. I know he's only stuck with what is on the page, but someone has to get the Dickie, and that's how life is, And he also deserves it for that disgusting death of Khalid.
To be fair, I think the commercial for British Airways wasn't his choice, but done by, hey, I've got us the Concorde. Film as much as you can.
Right.
Yep,
right.
That's exactly what that was.
I'll cut him some slack there, but I understand.
All right, Julie, who have you got?
All right, my Dougie, I'm actually going to go with Fiona Cumming for Castrovalva. I really enjoyed a lot of the sets. And again, the whole Escher-ness, I think, worked really, really well. And got to throw some sex dungeon in there. So appreciate getting to see some of that on screen. Didn't expect that from Doctor Who. And I just think there were a few things that, from a directorial perspective, were actually very interesting in Castrovalva. And plus, I thought people wouldn't go that direction. The Dickie, this one was tough because I don't disagree with Reilly, with Ron Jones for Time Flight, because there were a lot of issues with Time Flight, with the minions, I guess, of the Master, and then obviously all the stuff with the Concorde and everything like that. But I am going to at least say, hey, Peter Grimwade, why in the world could I not understand the Cybermen again? And I understand that we want to keep with certain types of voices and things when we have the Cybermen, but can we straddle the I still need to be able to understand them with them having an electronic voice, please?
So you're going with Peter Grimwade for Earthshock?
No, it's mostly Ron Jones, and just throwing a little bit at Peter Grimwade. Does he have a larger Dickie or a smaller Dickie? I don't know how this works.
Oh.
It's not about the person, it's who you were giving your Dickie to.
Oh, gross.
It still stands. A larger or smaller one. Come on.
I'd say the larger Dickie. If that's going to Ron Jones, then so be it. Diana, over to you.
I'm choosing to opt out of this narrative.
Welcome to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension, where our sole goal is to make Diana uncomfortable.
So, in a complete 180, my best is Peter Grimwade because Earthshock and Kinda were both well done for reasons that have already been stated. But my worst is actually Fiona Cumming. I'm sorry. And honestly, it's because it's the only one that I made a deliberate note about while I was watching this series. Was at the end, I said that this director-writer combo is absolutely trash. There was something about it that did not graft well with me. And so I can't exactly put my finger on why, but I'm sorry, Fiona, you're getting the Dickie. Which, honestly, out of those options is my preferable one anyway.
I'd be remiss if I didn't make a comment about Dickie and Cumming.
Nice.
Leave it at that. Yeah, I'm in agreement with Reilly and Diana. The Dougie goes to Peter Grimwade for Earthshock. Again, I think that was an absolute masterclass in building tension. I think he got the best out of all of his actors. Just very, very solid job. It's the best story of the season for a reason. Hey, that rhymes. In terms of the Dickie, it's going to go to John Black for Four to Doomsday. He had a solid cast. Instead, it felt incredibly plodding. I didn't enjoy it. It's still the worst story of my ratings so far in the entire show. And candidly, some of that blame goes on him. So, John Black, it's your fault. Next up, and again, if you don't have an answer to this one, it's fine. But the Don Smith Award for Unnecessary Fan Wank. Reilly, do you have anything?
It's debatable. I think you maybe could nominate the first two episodes of Castrovalva where the plot barely progresses and we meander around the TARDIS, learning new little trivia and bits that seem unnecessary. That's my proposal. I don't know. Like, I'm willing to be talked out of it.
Okay.
I don't necessarily disagree, but I don't know how fan wanky it is.
Yeah.
On occasion, they have the Doctor kind of out of commission for a little bit in the process of regeneration. I mean, they did it with...
Pertwee.
They did it with Pertwee, so I guess it wasn't introduced here, so I wouldn't put it here.
Diana, anything?
I kind of thought the simple inclusion of bookending the season with the Master was a bit fan wanky.
I would argue against that simply because I don't think they added anything new to the lore with it.
That's true, yeah.
But equally, if that's your nomination, that's your decision.
It's like a soft nom.
A soft nom?
Yeah.
A little nibble?
Yeah. Just like how the Master likes it.
Gosh.
I'm in agreement with Julie. I don't have a nomination for this one. I don't think this season was particularly fan wanky. I do think that will change next season.
Joy.
Nice.
Season 20. It's an anniversary season.
I love a good bit of fan wank.
All right. Next up, best and worst use of music. Reilly.
Best use of music was that absolute banger that played when the TARDIS crew steals the ambulance in Castrovalva. It has that funky late 70s synth going on, even though it's 1982, 1981. I don't know, it really hits. Strange enough, the worst use of music is also in Castrovalva, and that is when the Doctor is looking at himself in the mirror in his new outfit. It is a pretty big moment for the show, and I feel like it's just being undercut with music that sounds like I would expect it from a Final Fantasy game on the Super Nintendo. So those are my two choices.
All right, Julie.
I gotta say, I'm either disappointed in myself or disappointed in season 19. I went through all my notes, and I didn't make any comments on the music. Which tells me something. Which tells me that the music must have been so bland that I didn't note any of it down. So I unfortunately don't have anything other than season 19, what are you doing?
Yeah. Diana.
That's so crazy because same.
You're not one who normally notices the music, to be fair.
To still go through the whole season and not have one note about, oh, that sound was either good or bad. I did like this noise. I did not like this noise is a little unusual.
The surprising thing for me is the only time I mentioned music was in our big finish.
Yeah. And so for nothing to truly stand out is definitely a shame. But I also made a big old note at the top of my notes for next season to please remember to make notes about music because this shit does not stick in your head. So to be continued.
For me, I know Peter Grimwade hated it, but I actually liked the various clangings in Earthshock. I think it worked very well with the androids and the Cybermen.
Is that music? Clangings?
I mean, it was done by the incidental music composer as opposed to the special sounds guy.
Okay.
As the host of this episode, I will allow it. But I agree with Julie. The problem with this season is the music overall was generally unnoticeable. You know, it was bland. I racked my brain for the worst use of music and realized, aside from the various clangings in Earthshock, I couldn't think of anything. So, worst use of music, all of it, because it was bland? None of it, because it was bland? I don't know. One or the other. But certainly not the best season. I miss that banging unit theme from the Ambassadors of Death. Give us something like that again. At least that's memorable. And then our last category, and we may not have anything for this, the Dudley Simpson Lifetime Achievement Award. Has anyone done anything to justify that?
Not this season.
Julie?
Nah.
Yeah, me neither. All right, not awarded. Still only been awarded once to Dudley Simpson.
That feels very appropriate.
Well, see, I think the problem here is that kind of like the Baseball Hall of Fame, you can't really get the award until you've been retired for a while. So perhaps we should be looking at people who've been off the show for like at least 3 to 5 years. And in that case, we need to be more prepared.
And here's the thing. I would actually say it goes to people who are making their final contribution to the show.
Okay.
And aside from Hartnell, and we can argue later as to whether or not he deserves a retro one, which we would have given us around the time of the Three Doctors, we haven't had the last appearances of Troughton, of Pertwee, of Baker.
Okay.
Some of the directors we've had their last appearance, so we might be able to argue that Dougie should have got one, but equally, he's got a category named after him.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So we'll come back and maybe do some retro ones when we get to the end of Classic Who, but my belief is it should be with their final appearance on the show.
Fair enough.
So, having concluded the awards segment, we move into our final metric count. Now, the camp count. Season 18, the previous season, had an ending camp count of 6.5, leaving us with a total series count of 222.5. Season 19, by contrast, finished with a camp count of 18. Nearly three times what season 18 had. But again, season 17 had 32.5, season 16 had 18. So this is not an unprecedented amount of camp. And 8 of those points were awarded to Anthony Ainley for chewing the scenery in Castrovalva. We came down pretty heavily on him. We came down pretty heavily on Simon Rouse in Kinder as well. Kinder got 4 points. So those two stories drove 2/3 of our points for this season. But that brings us up to a total series count so far of 240.5.
That 0.5, man.
Yeah, we're going to have to round that up at some point. I'll explain later. At the end of season 18, our total count for the show so far was 8. Our count for season 19 was 8.
Uh-oh.
We have doubled the number of I'll explain laters in one season, and I think there's something really beautiful about that.
Starting.
Now, Quarry Query. We had no quarries in season 18, and I am proud to announce we had the return of the quarry this season. Earthshock was our only quarry, so that was +1 to the Quarry Query, bringing us up to 29 appearances of quarries so far in the show. And finally, there were no Jelly Babies this season. We are stagnant on the Jelly Baby count at 97. Looking to our season roundup, and I'm going to tackle our own scores first. Diana, are you keeping track of what you rated things?
Absolutely not.
If you had to hazard a guess, what do you think was your highest?
My highest, Earthshock.
And your lowest?
Probably 4 to Doomsday. Yeah.
Bingo.
Yes.
Reilly, what do you think yours were, highest and lowest?
Highest, Earthshock. Lowest, Kinda.
You tied Kinder and 4 to Doomsday at lowest.
Okay.
Julie, what do you think?
Earthshock and Fort of Doomsday.
Bingo, and so was mine. So overall, Julie liked this season the best. You had an average for the season of 6.07. Earthshock was your highest with an 8, and then you had The Visitation, Black Orchid, Castrovalva, Kinder, and Time Flight. Time Flight got a 5.5, and then you had a drop-off to Fort of Doomsday, which was just 2.5. Our next highest rater was myself. I gave Earthshock an 8. Then followed by The Visitation, Black Orchid, Kinder, Time Flight, and Castrovalva, which I gave a 5. And then I had a significant drop-off to Fort of Doomsday, which I gave a 1.
That would do it. Okay.
Diana was the second least favorable. Highest was Earthshock with a 9, followed by The Visitation, Black Orchid, Time Flight, Castrovalva, and Kinder, which she gave a 4.5. And then Diana, the drop-off from there to Fort of Doomsday, he gave Fort of Doomsday a 1, for a total of 5.86.
Yeah, I ran that whole spectrum.
And then our lowest scorer was Reilly. And Reilly, you gave Earthshock an 8. The Visitation was next, Black Orchid, Time Flight, and then Castrovalva, which you gave a 3.5 to. And then Fort of Doomsday and Kinder were both at the bottom for you with a 3, giving you a season average of 5.
Oh, right at 5. Wow.
And to give kind of the overall story averages, Earthshock was our highest with 8.25. The Visitation followed 7.25. Black Orchid with a 7. Time Flight 5.75. Kinder 5. Castrovalva 4.88. And Fort of Doomsday with 1.88.
Heck yeah.
Gives us a season average of 5.71. Now, to put that in perspective, 2 other seasons scored lower.
Which were?
So the next one down was season 15, which averaged a 5.5. And then the lowest that we've had so far was season 17, which averaged a 5.47.
It's been a rough couple recent seasons.
Yeah, we had a little uptick in season 18. We really liked season 16, Key to Time. But yeah, it's been a little bit rough. What is worth noting here is Fort of Doomsday has officially scored as our second lowest story of all time, losing out to the Space Pirates, which scored an average of 1.5. So, not great. So that's our scores and metrics done. We are going to move into questions from social media. I have divided these up into categories, and we are going to start off with questions about the Fifth Doctor. And we'll start with Ben Flay, who says, what's your take on the outfit and new Doctor in comparison to others? Is he the Doctor yet? And we've already answered the second part of that. 3 of us said he was the Doctor by Earthshock. Reilly is still not convinced.
Correct.
But guys, your take on the outfit and the Fifth Doctor in comparison to others?
Not a fan of the outfit, to be perfectly clear. I think it is a bit too bland. And compared to others, I don't want to be overly critical, so I'm going to reserve that. It's just been 1 season. I think 1 season's enough for the outfit, but to make any judgments or comparisons between the Fifth Doctor now and the previous ones is too early for me, because I don't want to be too critical.
Cool. I'll be critical.
Yes.
I think after coming off such a fabulous outfit as the Fourths, I understand why they went more muted. But the problem is that it's more muted and honestly kind of boring. I don't hate it. And I do think it's quite iconic, especially because, at least in an American lens, cricketer outfits aren't like super common. I would have never been exposed to this outside of Doctor Who as a kid, really. And so I do think that it is very striking, but it's not like my favorite Doctor fit. So I guess I wasn't all that critical.
Julie, any opinions?
I don't necessarily think it's as bland as the other 2 think. It's still, it's stripes. How good can we make that, really? Can we get the Doctor in his dressing gown from Black Orchid? Because let's go.
Yes, Queen.
I don't want to spend too much time on an outfit because I don't think an outfit makes or breaks the Doctor. And as for, obviously, how is the new Doctor? It's a tough thing when you're first starting out. I personally didn't like Tom Baker for a while, longer than most everyone else. And I think I actually took to Peter Davison a little bit faster than I took to Tom Baker, which I know is very different from a lot of other people. So I'm not as critical on Peter Davison as I think others are.
And I think for me, the outfit's dumb. I'm just going to lay it out there. It's not that it's a cricket-esque outfit. It's the continued use of the question marks on the collar, as if to say, oh, look at me, aren't I mysterious and quirky? Get out of here. And a decorative vegetable that Peter Davison was promised would be explained. And I know I said this when we did Castrovalva. Spoilers, it isn't explained until his very last story. So it's just there for no good reason at this point in time because no one's actually figured out an explanation for it. It's just, again, ooh, isn't he quirky? He's wearing a decorative vegetable. Get out of here. It's not a good costume. And sadly, I don't think any of the 80s Doctors have good costumes, including my beloved 7th Doctor, who I actually cosplay. You know, there's that.
I'm of a mind with you there.
Yeah. And as to what's he like as the new Doctor in comparison to others, I think it is very sad that it took 6 stories for 3 out of 4 of us to say, yes, he's the Doctor. And the 4th one of us, after 7 stories, still hasn't said, yes, he's the Doctor. I think his characterization has overall been weak. He's been sidelined. I think that's partly he's the victim of the crowded TARDIS. And it just doesn't quite work in comparison to his predecessors. We were all convinced by Hartnell very, very quickly. We were convinced by Troughton pretty quickly. Pertwee, first few stories. Baker by Genesis of the Daleks, if not the Ark in Space. And yet for Davison, 6 stories in for 3 of us. And 7 are not in for Reilly. That's disappointing to me.
They'll never get me.
Next up, Guy Lambert. If Davison had been a one-and-done Doctor like Chris Eccleston, what do you think would have been his legacy?
Golly. That's so rude.
I feel like I think our answer is implied by our previous answer.
Yeah, it probably is. We're going to say not good.
Yeah, I don't think we need to pile on.
Well, what's interesting, too, is that the thing with Eccleston, because I love Eccleston, but he had a similar problem where a lot of those early episodes are kind of bad. I mean, not as many bad episodes, I would say, but there were some questionable story arcs in Eccleston's run. And, you know, it's a similar thing here is I think a lot of our problems with Davidson isn't a Davidson problem. It's a writer and crowded TARDIS problem.
Here's the thing on that, and I'm going to quote a bit of Eccleston, and I do have it pulled up because I had a feeling we'd go here. He may have had some questionable stories, but from his very first episode, I had no doubt that he was the Doctor. There's that scene where he and Rose are walking in the street and talking, and she says, really though, Doctor, tell me, who are you? And he stops, and he has that little monologue where he holds her hand and says, do you know, like we were saying about the Earth revolving, like when you were a kid, the first time they tell you the world's turning and you just can't quite believe it because everything looks like it's standing still. I can feel it. The turn of the Earth. The ground beneath our feet is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and the entire planet is hurtling around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour, and I can feel it. We're falling through space, you and me, clinging to the skin of this tiny little world, and if we let go, that's when he lets go of her hand. That's who I am. Now forget me, Rose Tyler. Go home. He was the Doctor for me from that moment, from his very first story.
That's also a writer thing.
It is. But yeah, I mean, it's a writing problem. But again, my opinion is the 5th Doctor isn't written well until Earthshock. Eccleston was written well in his first episode, even if the plots had some issues.
And I think it's also to that point, we look back at 9's tenure and we go, whether you liked it or not while it was being released, I think the retrospective outlook is everybody was dumb that didn't like it at the time. We can acknowledge that Christopher Eccleston knocked it out of the park. It is a good season. Retrospectively, people have really begun to appreciate exactly what that season is.
Yeah.
We are more than triple distant that from this season, and this was still bad.
Yep. I agree.
So if this had been all he had gotten, Doctor Who was probably canceled because it was bad.
Well, and the thing is, at the time, it got pretty high ratings.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been cancelled, but if he had been a one-and-done Doctor, I think he'd be considered to be one of the worst. That's my honest opinion. And then last on the topic of the 5th Doctor, Citrine Dragonfly, better known as Cat, asks, how do you feel that this Doctor-Master pairing works? Good foils or off chemistry?
I'm sorry. I continue to be negative, so I don't need to say anything. You know what I'm going to say. On to the next person.
I mean, it's not a good fit. Ainsley is too insane and wild and all of that other stuff. And Davidson doesn't have a strong character. And if you're going to have super crazy on one side, you at least have to balance that out with something strong. And Davidson is just not that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think current Master is too over the top for even what they're trying to get at with the 5th Doctor in general, which seems to be quieter, less kooky, less over the top compared to 4. And so when you're going to compare him with a Master that's primed for working with 4, it's just that imbalance reads as the Master being too much, and the Master is too much all the time. So for him to even be perceived with that even more from where the Doctor is never going to work well.
And I think a good master is written with a particular Doctor in mind. You know, Delgado was meant to be the supervillain to Pertwee's spy doctor, basically. Ainley, I would argue, and it's been said, was scripted the way he was to go up against the strength of character of Tom Baker's Doctor. He's not a good foil to Peter Davison's. Because, again, the point's been made, his over-the-topness kind of drowns out the Fifth Doctor. And then you look into the future, you know, John Sim as a younger, zanier master was written directly to play off of David Tennant as the Doctor. Michelle Gomez as Missy, again, she is truly bonkers, but she was written to be a good foil to Peter Capaldi's intensity. And I would even say Sacha Dhawan, he's a mix of all of them, and we will have a lot of things to say about the Chibnall era, but he was a highlight of it. That's just the fact here. So this Doctor Master pairing for me does not work. It is very off chemistry. Next up, we're going to talk about the companions. We have a couple of questions here, and Alan Seiler, our good friend, asks, which of the three companions got the best character development over the course of the season? And which character do you think you know better now than you did when the season started?
In terms of growth, really the only person who had much growth, if anything, is Tegan just simply not wanting to go to Heathrow. Or Adric only dying because he was unwilling to let a problem stump him. That's not true character growth. And Nyssa gets sidelined so often and really doesn't get to do anything except in Black Orchid and maybe in a few others, but really they don't grow. None of them do because there's too many of them and we spent so much time fighting amongst ourselves that we couldn't actually let the characters breathe. And the one time we got to breathe, well, we then end up losing one. I don't think there's character growth.
I feel that it may be an artificial character growth that I see with Nyssa, because being so underused at the beginning of the season, she's carrying along that trauma of, you know, the Master. But after Adric dies, they have more space for her. She gets to show more of her personality, and I feel like I just learned more about her. Maybe it's because her character, in comparison to Adric and Tegan, was very reserved. And so now that I get to see her actually do more, speak more, and particularly in the Black Orchid episode, I feel like I did know more about her at the end of the season than I did at the beginning.
Okay, you learned something, but did she grow? I do think those are two different things.
This is pure devil's advocate. I agree that it's not very clear. I think that you can make a Hail Mary argument that because she is reserved at the beginning of the season, and, you know, she's carrying that trauma, maybe it's a very, very maybe. What we witnessed is the coming to terms with trauma in an incredibly subtle way, also known as actually no way at all. It's just pure damn happenstance.
I'm a bit negative on this one. Sorry.
I'll take the Hail Mary pass and attempt to run it to the touchdown. The reason that I think that Nyssa really gets what I would actually call character growth towards the end is the fact that, because like Reilly's right, in the beginning of this season, particularly, she kind of falls back from some of the character growth we had seen in the last season and does become very quiet, very reserved. She's very afraid of leaving the TARDIS. She doesn't go out and do much. And then at the end, she's taking a lot of the ownership of fixing the problems. She realizes what the Doctor is going to do and who he is as a being, as an entity, is to kind of go cause chaos, and that there needs to be something done. And she really steps up in that leadership role and does the things that need doing and really finds that forward momentum. Again, it's not like night and day, but it is still technically character growth.
I was unaware that she was afraid to leave the TARDIS.
At the beginning, though, she was always like, no, don't leave. We need to wait for the Doctor. And it was how they kept sidelining her into the TARDIS, where she was kind of the nanny and the corraller. She would be, oh, no, don't go. We need to stay here. And that was like her only job, was to keep people on the TARDIS. And at the end, it was like, okay, but we're also going to build a sonic boom thing that I still don't understand. But, you know, it worked. So whatever. And, you know, towards the end, she's really taking ownership of what she can do instead of just staying put and being the nanny.
I have nothing to add. Diana phrased that perfectly. I agree.
Hey, thanks.
I'm not super convinced, but all right.
That's fair enough. We'll call it a 3-point goal. I think I did the sports right.
Go sports.
Woo.
All right. And then Kieran James Evans asked, did they get rid of the right companion? Could they have fixed Adric?
I'll take this one off the top. Yes, they got rid of the right companion. No, I don't think they could have fixed Adric. I think that they had done so much shit to that poor boy that he was just lost. There was no finding a character for him. Honestly, if they had fully Katrina'd him, I would not have been surprised. And there was just no coming back for Adric. Bless his heart.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I don't think I can add to that. I think that's absolutely fair.
Yeah, I think Adric worked well with Romana, but with these other companions, Nyssa filled too much of a similar role. And if we weren't going to try to switch up that dynamic or have them work a little bit better together, then yeah, it's the only way you could have done it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I mean, I think the point that Adric could kind of run his course and there wasn't a lot more that could be done with the character, I agree with that. I think there is still scope for Nyssa and Tegan to grow. So they did get rid of the right companion. Could they have fixed Adric? Yes, but they would have had to treat him differently from the very start of the Davison era.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have a question about a supporting character. Dave Jones asks, what character from this season would you have liked to learn more about and seen in their further adventures? And why is it Richard Mace from The Visitation?
Well played. Well played.
A 1940s area radio serial drama featuring Richard Mace is chef's kiss.
Yep, definitely Big Finish could go lots of directions with Richard Mace.
Absolutely. I mean, it's Richard Mace. He's glorious. He's over the top. He's fantastic. Yes, please, more of him. I have nothing further to add there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, period, the end.
Now we have a couple of questions that I have categorized under a category that I have simply named, Where Did It Go Wrong? Stacey Custer. So, I just binged both Earthshock and Time Flight to finish the season. Wow. Why are the supporting characters the only thing that makes this season watchable? What could or should have been done differently for better chemistry within the TARDIS crew? And can the Doctor please stop rolling his eyes at everyone? An entire season of the Doctor not feeling like the Doctor is rough.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
Stacey, to answer your questions in order, 1, because they did not bother or were too lazy to set up characterization for our actual companions to carry throughout the season. Question 2, by probably reducing one of the TARDIS crew early on, because I feel like it started to improve after Adric left, and that's not a diss on Adric. I think it would have improved if it was just anybody, it just gives them more room. 3, yes, the Doctor could stop rolling his eyes at everyone. We already talked about our negative feelings about the current Doctor, so I, once again, will not pile on.
I think a couple things. Because it's a new Doctor, and we know that they kind of rearranged some of the stories. Some of them got filmed before some of the others and things like that. But when you have a brand new Doctor, I think that lends to some issues with on-screen chemistry and things like that, because it felt like there were some better things in different places where you're like, I don't understand what's going on here. Why do these characters feel like they hate each other? And I just think that some of that rearrangement didn't help things. And I do think that potentially some of the stories were misplaced themselves as well. Things like Black Orchid, where you actually have them having a good time compared to the rest of the season, could have been a little bit earlier in the season so that we could have gotten a little bit of breathing room earlier and not have started in the weird and started with something stable.
And I think my opinion is, in terms of what could or should have been done differently for better chemistry within the TARDIS crew, get rid of one of the companions much earlier. Thinking about it.
Oh, didn't I just say that?
You did. But I wanted to re-emphasize it. I would have left Tegan on Earth in Castrovalva. Adric was there first, and I think it would be unfair to leave Adric on Earth. I think he would have got a lot more character development out of it if Tegan hadn't been around. They could have focused on his relationship with the Doctor and had more time to maybe start it out as kind of antagonistic with the Fifth Doctor, but then dial it back and have them come to a compromise more organically. And I think Nyssa, while she wasn't originally meant to be a companion, actually works quite well, and it would have been nice to have her have more things to do. I think we've got a problem here that the TARDIS is overcrowded.
I think you're giving the writers a lot of credit and grace.
Yeah.
Because my viewpoint is that honestly, nothing really could have been done differently because all of these stories that were being written were for the Fourth Doctor and the expectations of what that TARDIS crew looked like and performed as. And so having to rewrite it for a completely different Doctor and more companions when it's very clear that the writers don't give a shit about who these characters are, they're just trying to get a show made. It doesn't matter who those companions were and who the Doctor is. They were all going to struggle in stories that were not written for them.
That's fair.
I'm hoping that we're going to see an upturn in the next season where we'll start getting more stories that are written for who Five is and what the potential of the companions that he does have are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we'll notice an uptick in how maybe we feel about people when they have material written for them.
Yeah. And this is kind of a similar question. Joseph Staub, where exactly did this season go wrong in your opinions? Was it trying to introduce too many new characters all at once? Was it the lack of cohesive character development for practically any of the main cast? Or did it have more to do with the quality of the stories themselves? And I kind of want to take those last two questions and say it was both of those. It was the lack of cohesive character development and the fact that we looked at the season and the only one that was stellar was Earthshock. That's a problem. You know, a good season should on average be 7 or higher, in my opinion. And this season just didn't come anywhere near that batting average.
Well, I think one of the other things too, right, is that you mentioned it before, the first 3 or 4 stories were these big, grandiose, very weird concepts. And trying to introduce a brand new Doctor, a new companion on top of some really weird out there ideas was probably also not a great idea.
Yeah.
Right. And I'd also like to add that the show doesn't have to be like this, but it helps for the audience as you watch these people go on these adventures to feel like they're enjoying themselves. That there's a positivity amongst themselves, but you totally do not feel that with this crew. It seems like they all basically despise one another and they don't want to be there. And so it kind of throws that back on the audience. Like, do I want to see a bunch of people that seem to be miserable at doing this? Because I don't enjoy watching that. And that's fine. You can still do that if you want to make that as a part of a character development thing, which they don't do. And it could probably work a lot better if it's just a Doctor and one companion. But when it's this many people together and there's just zero positivity, zero kind of like cheerfulness, that's rough.
Yeah. So from there, we move into what I'm thinking are kind of more general questions. Some of them are about the season. Some of them are kind of where the show is at the time. We'll start with Sean Collicutt, who asks, do you think pure historicals would be popular if they made a comeback? We obviously had one this season with Black Orchid. I guess, is that something that should have continued after this season? I will say it's the last time we get it.
What?
I love a pure historical, and there's a market for them. There is a huge group of people who would adore to have historicals. The way you do historicals is you don't make it a super famous character or certain types of events. You can have it in certain settings, and maybe if you have certain backdrops of certain wars, you can do it. But like, despite me liking things like Marco Polo and things like that, maybe steer clear from those and just say, hey, here's this generic 1920s like we got with Black Orchid, because Black Orchid was beautiful. And I think if you can do the period piece without necessarily making it about a famous person, you can make historicals work really well.
I personally really love the historicals with famous people in them because they're fun for people who know the actual history. If you're going to go with the famous person, that you dial it down to being more chill, kind of like the Agatha Christie episode where Agatha Christie was just a person in there. If you knew Agatha Christie, you kind of understood some more jokes, but it's a good Agatha Christie story, you know? So I think that there is a huge market for it. I think it's one of those things that people psych themselves out because it's history. So of course we're not going to like it. Shut up. It's science fiction. You're already watching nerd stuff. Like, take a chance on a 3-piece suit in tweed, and I think you'll like the 1920s. Like, that's all it is.
The reason why I say take out the famous people is mainly because that's a lot of times where I see people balk. And part of it is they're like, oh, well, it's not true. Well, yes, it's not true. Again, it's science fiction.
They're lame. Yeah.
That's generally a lot of viewpoints that end up getting thrown out there. And it's like, you're not watching a documentary, guys. Chill.
I wasn't thinking about the hyper nerds that are like, there's no such thing as electricity back then. How could you? Shut up. Watch Doctor Who. You're watching science fiction. Shut up.
I do think it would be kind of cool to go back to the show's original remit with the educational aspect and educate a little on history. But I say that as someone who has a master's degree in history and is passionate about history. Would they be popular? I don't know. Should they come back? Yes. Next up, Gaz Island. Is the show 1980s enough for you at this point? What 1980s tropes do you hope to see in future seasons?
I think it's still kind of trickling in. We haven't gone full-blown 80s yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's only 82 at this point.
So I would say, is it 80s enough for me? I don't know what ODing on 80s would feel like, so I don't know what is the recommended dosage of 80s, but I know we're in a safe spot right now, so is that 80s enough for me? If it doesn't kill me, sure, it's fine.
I think the next Doctor, after Davison, should have a very loud and colorful costume that just screams 1980s.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of skin in this game. I'm not obsessed with the 80s. I couldn't tell you all the different tropes of the 80s. So honestly, I couldn't tell you if it's an 80s trope or just a weird British thing sometimes.
Fair enough. And it's always weird to try to be like, is this 80s enough when we're in like 1982? Because those transition years between decades are always a little confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy, having seen the rest of the 80s, that it will be just 80s enough for me. Thank you very much.
It's like with the 90s. I think of the 90s as like Spice Girls and Oasis, not Pump Up the Jam. Right? Pump Up the Jam still screams 80s to me. That's just how it is. Next up, Beardo Beatnik, the man, the myth, the legend, asks, besides Adric, who else do you think the Master has trapped down in his kink dungeon?
No, I have a great answer to this. He has attempted to get Leela and Romana 1 down there. However, they then become the mistresses because, let's be honest, they can't be kept down there.
Couple of doms. Yes, I'm down.
My answer was that what he has down there, besides Adric, is multiple real dolls of each incarnation of the Doctor.
Yes. I was going to go with a body pillow for each Doctor.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I also think there was an element of self-love when we eventually see the John Sim Master and Missy come together. So I also want to say his own prior incarnations are down there.
Mm-hmm.
Including
Crispy Master?
Including Crispy Master.
Awesome.
All right, next up, Austin D. Patterson. Do you think there's an inherent flaw in the structure of the show where the change in lead actor and or showrunner comes with peaks when the show is very popular that are then hard to follow, leading to a decline in popularity only resolvable with a hiatus?
I think he's right. It's a no-win scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it can only be resolved in a hiatus, though. That seems a bit harsh. Because there's times when I think that it does peak to a certain degree. And then also people's definition of peak is different, right? Like I sit here in that Troughton is my favorite. And so when we got to Pertwee, I was like, man, this is going to drag. Turns out Pertwee had some of the most stable seasons of all the Doctors and things like that. So this is a hard one for me because I wouldn't say that after Tom Baker, there should have been a hiatus because I don't think that's true.
I think it depends, right? So the show was very, very nearly cancelled after Troughton. And you had, to your point, Julie, that very stable team, Terrence Dix, Barry Letts, in the Pertwee era, that kind of brought the show back to life. It was in colour, it was exciting. Then we move into Baker and we get Hinchcliffe and Holmes, who do amazing things that really drives the popularity of the show forward. But then it kind of tapers off, as Austin said. But season 19, even though we didn't like it very much, had really high ratings for the show. So it came back a bit. Now, we are entering into a period of decline where the show's ratings start tapering off between now and the end of the classic show, and there is a hiatus. But then if we look at the new show, the show's popularity peaked in the UK with Russell T Davies, David Tennant, and Catherine Tate. But Moffat comes in with Matt Smith, with Karen Gillan, with Arthur Darvill, and that was a very popular TARDIS team. There was that shift where we had a completely new production team, new Doctor, new companions, and the show continued to do really well. And then ratings started tapering off in the Capaldi era, largely because they lost the teenage girls who only watched because the Stars show was hot. And then a decline began, and despite best efforts to retrieve its fortunes, ratings still aren't good even now with Anshuti Gatwa, or whomever the next Doctor may be, whether or not it's truly Billy Piper or not. So is it inevitable? No. Does it happen? If the show's not handled right, yes, it does. But it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to happen that way. And there have been times when it hasn't.
Honestly, there have been more times when it hasn't than it has.
Yeah, I agree with that.
it's the more of the nature of the show that has decided that it's not going to have a definite ending. That is the inherent flaw, because an end must come at some point.
And our very last question comes from Paul Arthur, better known as Doctor Who 60s, 70s, 80s. And we're going to take this a bit more lighthearted to wrap this up. Normally we save Beardo for this, but I really liked this one from Paul. If Davison had a stick of celery, what vegetable should the other doctors wear?
Okay. Did all of you see the interview? Well, I say interview on the Graham Norton show, David Tennant, where he doesn't understand emojis.
Oh, yes.
And so obviously David Tennant must have an eggplant because he doesn't know what an eggplant emoji means.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I was trying to keep this to doctors we've already watched on the show.
Yeah, that's what I did.
I know, but I just had to throw that out there because I also want people to go watch that Graham Norton clip because it's amazing.
I really tried to wrap my brains around this, and the only one I came up with is I think the second Doctor would have a carrot.
Ah, that's interesting.
Carrots are kind of silly and irreverent, kind of goofy, much like the second Doctor.
Okay, this is what I have. This is my breakdown. This is by feeling. I can't really explain it. First Doctor should be a radish. Second Doctor should be some sort of hot pepper. Third Doctor should be a leaf of spinach. Fourth Doctor should be a carrot.
Okay.
The only one that I actually could think of one for, because it came immediately and no one has a choice. This is just what it is. Sorry, everybody. The second Doctor gets a rambutan because it's silly and it's cute and it's not actually spiky. It just kind of looks spiky. So it's just, they're very adorable and will look very good on his little jacket.
For Hartnell, I went with a turnip instead of a radish.
Yeah. Well, I think we're in the same ballpark there.
Yeah.
The carrot, I think it should go to someone more goofy. So between Troughton and Baker, I can go with the carrot either way. I'm not giving Baker his cabbage. Like, I'm not going to do it.
Give Tom the talking cabbage, damn it.
Pertwee is hard because he's the action doctor, so why would he have a vegetable?
And he's manly. He just has a big old hunk of steak on his lapel.
So gross.
Oh no, he'll have a bag of peas that he can use on bruises.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, good one.
Well, with that wonderful question, thank you, Paul, that brings us to the end of the episode. There were a few questions that didn't make it in, but we are actually running way over our usual time, so I made the executive decision to cut a few. So we will be back next time with our next regular episode, where we will kick off season 20 with Arc of Infinity as we travel the streets of Amsterdam. But as always, thank you so very much for listening, and of course, until next time, have a good one. You have been listening to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension with Diana Burney, Reilly Schreck, Julie Philippek, and myself, Anthony Williams. This episode, Unnecessarily Gross, was recorded on Monday the 7th of July 2025. If this is your first time listening into the show, all of our previous episodes are available wherever you like to get your podcasts. You can interact with us on Facebook and Instagram at @Watchers4D, and you can also email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, please do subscribe and consider leaving us a review or rating on your favorite podcasting app. All of those things really do help the show. And always remember, not every Doctor's first season can be a winner.